From the moment I saw the Paper Ghost Stories trailer, I was hooked. I loved the paper-thin cutout art style, and I'm a big fan of ghost stories in general, so I knew that Third Eye Open would be right up my alley. It's a childhood tale of a young girl and her ghost friend as they navigate the moving process, deal with bullies, and eventually come to grips with going to a brand new school. Is this supernatural thriller a spooky good time, or does it give up the ghost? That's what we're about to find out when I review Paper Ghost Stories Third Eye Open by Defunct Games. Third Eye Open revolves around a shy young girl named Ting who moves to Malaysia along with her overbearing father and doting mother. Although she's not exactly good at making new friends, Ting quickly bonds with Shu, a mysterious girl in a red dress who just so happens to be a ghost. Unfortunately, this means that Ting is the only one that can see Shu, so everybody else in her life thinks she's either crazy or has an imaginary friend, which is just one of the many bones of contention she has with her perpetually upset father. The story takes place over several years of Ting and Shu's friendship, which sees her become more confident and independent as she learns to cook, improves her social skills, and even goes to school. However, no matter how much she grows, Ting can't shake the notion that she's not like other people. She can see and interact with ghosts, something she quickly realizes is something of a curse. At the same time, Shu is coming to grips with her own reality that, as a ghost that nobody can see, she's not going to actually be able to help Ting if she gets into serious trouble. And, as it turns out, Ting is about to get into serious trouble. It starts out simple enough with a camping trip that spirals out of control when a bunch of the older kids convince everybody to search for spirits in the spooky forest. This eventually leads to Ting and her friends investigating an abandoned old house that's rumored to be haunted. Little did she know just how much this one bad decision would haunt her life for many years to come. Paper Ghost Stories can best be described as a dialogue-heavy visual novel with some light adventure gaming. The story is mostly told through conversations that Ting is having with Shu, her parents, friends, teachers, and even other ghosts. When we're not talking, we control what looks like a paper cutout of Ting as she walks around the various environments, picking up items and solving extremely simple puzzles. This can be anything from picking up garbage in the park to clearing the dishes after dinner. All the basic things that you would expect from controlling a young child. Of course, there are other activities, most of which feel like simplistic mini-games. For example, Ting will help one of her friends study the latest homework, which means solving some extremely simple math problems. There are also multiple times when you'll help to prepare food with mom and dad, and as kids do, you'll eventually have a marble tournament. That ends up being a lot more fun than you might expect. Although it's not a big part of the game, there are stealth levels scattered throughout Paper Ghost Stories. This comes in a couple of different forms, but the most common one shows you a cursor above somebody's head, showing you the direction they're looking. The goal is to sneak past them when they're either looking the other way or they have their eyes shut. It's both simple and surprisingly forgiving. Even with the few mini-games and the stealth options, this is primarily a story-focused narrative game. If you don't like reading dialogue bubbles, then turn back immediately because you're not going to have any fun with a vast majority of this game. However, from a storytelling perspective, there is a lot to like here. Shu's presence works as more than just a ghost story, but also works to give Ting's worries and anxiety a voice. Even without the supernatural elements, this would be an emotional story about a shy girl that nobody understands or even takes the time to know. It seems like everybody in Ting's life is either too busy, too angry, or just too wrapped up in their own lives to hear what she's saying. And it's clear that the young girl feels both isolated and alone. All she's really looking for is friendship, and yet her best friend is often the cause of her loneliness. The story's at its best when it's dealing with the very real human drama that impacts both young children and grown adults. There's a whole side story dealing with the mother that can easily be explained one way, Yet we see it through the eyes of Ting, who's convinced that it's all her fault. If only she was normal and couldn't see ghosts, or didn't go camping, or didn't go into that haunted house, things would be different. In reality, of course, that may not be true, but the story does a good job of showing you how a young child can and will blame themselves for adult problems that are outside of their control. Now, in a twist that I certainly didn't see coming, it's actually the supernatural parts of the ghost story that end up falling a little flat. There's a point early on in the game where it looks like Ting has gained her confidence and decides to start investigating the backstories of some of the ghosts that she's seeing. For example, she keeps finding wet books and backpacks at her preschool, hinting at a tragic backstory for one of the former students. This intrigued Ting and her friends so much that solving the case was all they talked about. But then the resolution was incredibly anticlimactic and didn't really lead to much. Honestly, the logical next step would have been for Ting to start investigating Shu's mysterious death. After all, Shu doesn't exactly remember what happened, so you would think that her best friend would try to crack the case. But that doesn't happen. Years go by and it's barely even mentioned. When we finally do learn about Shu's untimely death, it's through an unrelated cinema. It neither connects to the rest of the story nor has much of an emotional impact on the character. It's just another anticlimactic plot point. Even the scary creatures that are haunting Ting's nightmare feel wholly unrelated from the rest of the story. Sure, we learn more about the awful things happening in the old abandoned house, but to what end? The final act of the story is extremely messy, and I didn't find the resolution to be all that satisfying. Running from ghosts may offer more tension, but the game's best bits are all rooted in the family drama and childhood story. One thing that Paper Ghost Stories is good at is setting a mood. No matter if you're exploring a haunted house or a scary campsite, you can practically cut the atmosphere with a knife. I absolutely love the look of this game, mostly using paper-thin cutouts that are interacting with a 3D world. It's like the horror game version of Paper Mario. The unique style does an excellent job of making us feel like we're in a far-off land that looks and feels completely different from what we're used to, not unlike what Ting is going through. And as she becomes better acquainted with the world around her, so do we. By the end of the game, the once jarring art style felt natural and welcoming. I didn't want to leave it. That said, I do wish there was more actual adventuring. I suppose that a game like Paper Ghost Stories would fall into the visual novel category, which is a genre that doesn't always have many games and adventuring. Third Eye Open does a good job of adding more to do than just reading, but honestly, I wish the balance was better. The things you end up doing throughout the story feel small and inconsequential. We rarely have an opportunity to just walk around and explore the various environments, because this is the kind of game where you walk 5 steps and you get into a lengthy conversation. If you're going in hoping to complete a bunch of missions and solve puzzles, then I think you're going to be extremely disappointed and probably a little bored. Now, it's also worth mentioning that Paper Ghost Stories comes with a second story called 7 PM, which was originally released back in 2020 and is a much shorter affair than Third Eye Open. It stars a new batch of haunted children and their obsession with a new person that moves into their apartment complex. It's a chilling little tale that does eventually connect to Third Eye Open, though that's something you're going to want to discover on your own. As a series, I hope the Paper Ghost Stories continues. While I was a little mixed on the story of Ting and her ghost friend Shu, there's a lot to like about both the narrative and the presentation. There really is a lot of promise here, and with a more satisfying story and better gameplay elements, Paper Ghost Stories could be something truly special. As it is, Third Eye Open is a solid enough effort that tries its hardest to juggle a childhood story with supernatural elements. It doesn't all come together as neatly as I would have liked, but at the same time, I'm happy that I got to meet Ting and her ghost friend Shu. With its stylish look and spooky atmosphere, I really wanted to love Paper Ghost Stories' Third Eye Open. It does a good job of putting you in the shoes of a shy young girl who just wants to be left alone with her ghost friend. Honestly, that's an intriguing setup, but while I found the family drama and conversations to be compelling, the supernatural elements are a whole lot less satisfying. It could also use a little more interactivity and adventuring. That said, the art style and the way the story is told sucked me in, even if some of the elements feel a bit disjointed. I would definitely play another Paper Ghost Stories game, but hopefully next time there's more for the player to do. Hey, thanks for watching our review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's the best game about childhood? Oh boy, there are so many, but I want to throw my vote out there right now for A Boy and His Blob. I don't know about you, but I didn't look at jelly beans the same way after that one. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other reviews, we're deep into review season. Look for reviews of the new Yars Rising game from Way Forward, as well as Iron Meat, a Kimbot, and the final piece of Not For Broadcast DLC. We got lots of stuff to talk about in the coming days, so do me a favor and click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.